We're in Denver, and I'm him. Many of you may know Ronnie already, for he's one for Eric that goes out as far and as wide as he can get it. And I have interviewed him before, but it was in a crowded restaurant a long time ago, and I was just sitting over there in the corner, and I just saw him coming round, and he was full of emotion because he'd just seen the Vaxxed bus. So we want to hear his story. So tell us. I know it's hard for you, and I know you're really suffering, but we need to hear his story.
Let's see. Back in 1984, my wife and I, we dated for a couple of years before we decided to get married. So we got married, and just like everybody else, started living our lives, trying to build a career and talk about a house, where we wanted to live and that kind of thing, children. My wife went to college to be a nurse. She started out being a LPN. So, it took us a while, but we finally got Eric here in May of 17th, 1991. Eric was born, and that was the most incredible day of my life. And when he came into our lives, it was wonderful. It was beautiful. So we, just like every other parent, we started thinking about school and what to do if Eric wanted to go to school. And my wife being the nurse, I kind of turned to her to kind of like guide us as to whether or not we did vaccinate. So that morning we took Eric in to get his vaccination.
That morning, how old was he that morning?
He was 6.5 months old. So we took him in, and I had this gut-wrenching feeling, we shouldn't do this. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. My wife says it's safe, and we should do this. And by all means, this is not her fault. It's not our fault. We did what we thought was right. And what everybody told us, and of course in the state of Mississippi, we have no exemptions. So we really had no choice, or we thought we did. So that morning we took Eric in, and we put him on the table, for the nurse to come in, and we didn't, read the pamphlets of that kind of thing. I mean, small little letters, so it's like we didn't even think, to read them. And of course, we just kind of went with it. So we went, and I still kept having that feeling, get up and run. Let's get out of here. And but I didn't. So Eric got his shot. We left that evening.
Yeah, do you know how many shots he got, or what shots?
He got 2, the DPT vaccine. So that was his first round. So we went and got that done, and Eric kept getting these ear infections, and he kept, kind of crying a lot. He was really a calm baby. He hardly ever cried. So we went on about our lives, and Eric had his own nursery, so he stayed in there. And come time for Eric to go back for his next well visit, and we're like, okay, let's go get this done. And still Eric kept having these ear infections, so we were like, okay, but he got well, and we took him back.
Did he have antibiotics?
Yes, he did. So we took him in for his next round of DPT.
So how old is he now?
He is probably almost 8 months old, because we kind of delayed because of all the ear infections. So we took him back to get his next round, and still that feeling is there again. But I didn't go with them this time. So my wife took him, and we noticed the night that he came home, Eric just kept crying. He'd cry and cry and cry, and had this really loud screech about it. And I kept having this feeling, what's going on? And Eric he just wasn't himself. So, days went on, and probably about 2 days later, we were getting ready for church, and I was holding Eric. I was holding him in my arms, and my wife was in the other room getting ready for church. And I was just, talking to Eric, and all of a sudden his eyes rolled back in his head, and he got real stiff, and his arms and legs just went out, and he just went into this kind of jerking noise. I thought he was dying. So I ran to my wife with him, and I said, honey, I don't know what's going on. And she got him, and she said, he's having a seizure. And I said, okay, what do we do? And she said, let's get him to the hospital. And the hospital was like 10, 15 minutes away. So we got him there, and he had already come out of the seizure. We went in, and I told the nurse, I said, hurry, he's having seizures. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, he's having seizures. And this is the hospital that my wife works at. And we take him to the back, and they take his temperature. I think it was like 102. Wasn't really high enough to cause a seizure, or to me. And we got him in the back, and they started doing their tests. So they did a spinal tap, that kind of thing. And we stayed in the hospital overnight, and they said probably nothing. It was probably just brought on by the ear infections and the fever. So we're like, okay, but in the back of my mind, I'm still, any minute this is going to happen again. So we took him home the next day. Still, don't know what's going on. So we have him, and I go back to work, and my wife is in church. That's next Sunday, and she's sitting there feeding him. All of a sudden, he goes into another seizure, but she thinks he's choking on his bottle. So she runs out, and they call me from, I worked at a local grocery store. I was training to be a manager there. And they said, well, we're at the hospital with Eric, and we're going to transfer him by ambulance to Mobile, which was like 25 miles away. So, okay, I'm on my way. So I got there, and Eric has already had about 15 seizures. So we get him to Mobile, Alabama. Then they said, well, they're doing all these tests. They don't know what's wrong with him. And I go in, they have him in intensive care. And I go in, and he's smiling, and he's doing all these jerking noises. He's having seizure after seizure. They put him on phenobarbital, and still CAT scans, that kind of thing, they still don't know what's wrong. And we're steady asking, what is wrong? What's going on? And it still doesn't dawn on us. Could it be the vaccines? What have we changed? So we started thinking, well, he's just now started eating cereal and baby food. Maybe something's gone wrong with Gerber, and we got a bad patch or something. So we start looking for things, because the doctors, they don't know. They're like, we don't know what's going on. And, they're running all these tests. They're doing genetic tests on my wife and I. And they're like, it's got to be something inside the family. It's got to be something going on with these two. They look alike, so maybe they're brother and sister. And we're like,
seriously?
No, we're not brother and sister. They test our hair, they test our blood, and those kind of things. So in the meantime, Eric is still seizing. So he has already had almost 100 seizures. So we, all that stuff goes on for about a week or two, and he's still in the hospital. They got the seizures under control for now, and they send us home. To decide, well, what do we do now? Because we're constantly watching him for seizures. And we get him home, and it's not even 2 nights, and we're back at the hospital. So this time it's worse.
Seizures.
Yeah, this time it's worse. I'm at work, and my wife has to do CPR on her own baby. And we get him up to the hospital, and they said, we don't have the equipment to take care of him here. We're going to have to south-flight him to Mobile. So they south-flight him to Mobile, to the hospital down there. So again, we're doing all these tests. Test after test, everything comes back normal. And they're like, we have no idea. So moving on, this happens over and over and over for months, and Eric is still constantly seizing. So we finally get a doctor after we fired the doctor that we had, because he told us, he said, go home, love your son for now, because he probably won't live to be 2. So we take our son home.
How old is he at this point?
He's probably almost 9.5 months old. He's still walking in his walker, playing, doing the normal things that a baby would do. He's cooing, he's eyeing, things like that. And we keep watching him for seizures. It's once that gets into your brain as a parent, it doesn't go away. I have nightmares of it. Noises that come up that I hear, I think it's him. So we go on, and finally we get a doctor that knows what's going on. And he told us himself, he said, this looks exactly like he's had a reaction to the DPT vaccine. At this point, we've already had our water tested, we've had our carpet tested, our walls, everything in our new home that we've only been in for almost 2 years. So we take him around to different places. We've heard about New Orleans. Well, New Orleans knows what's going on. Maybe they know what's going on with our son. So we take him down to New Orleans to see this specialist. And she tells us that, it's probably nothing. He'll grow out of it. Most kids do. Take him on home and continue your life as you're going. So at this point, we're still confused. So we take him home, and of course we're asking his pediatricians, could this be anything to do with his vaccine? No, just get that out of your head right now, because the vaccines are safe. There couldn't be anything like that going on. So what do you say? You believe what they tell you. So we take our son home, and we're trying to live our normal life. And again, the seizures are back. This time bigger and worse than before. And we're having seizure after seizure every minute. He's turning blue. He's getting stiff. His eyes are rolling in the back of his head. And as parents, we're like, what do we do? And my wife, I turn to her because, she knows more than I do. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. I have no idea. And we're going nuts at this point. We call the doctor, and he's like, give him more medicine. And we're like, we already have him at his limit. He's on 5 or 6 different types of seizure medications. He's been in and out of the hospital. They even tried things like formaldehyde enemas on him to get him to stop seizing, and nothing worked. So finally, we get this answer that maybe we can have that half of his brain taken out, the half that's seizing.
And who tells you that?
The neurologist that we had at that point. He was just at his wit's end. He's like, I don't know what's going on with this kid. And of course, back then, we're like, we didn't know that seizures are one of the main side effects to the DPT vaccine. Still didn't connect. So in the back of my mind, I'm still going, it's got to be something. It's got to be the water. It's got to be his baby food. Something. And of course, they're like, well, did you drop him on his head? No, we didn't drop our son on his head. Nothing. So then they go and they do more tests, more tests, more tests. And then they come back with us, well, maybe we can take out that part of his brain that's seizing, and we can take care of the seizures that way. So they send us to Birmingham, Alabama. And at this point, Eric is 10 months old. The YouTube video that most people see on there is Eric the very last day we were leaving the next morning to go, and I thank God we have that video. We were leaving the next morning to go to Birmingham to take out a part of our son's brain. And we get there, and they're doing all these tests. They want Eric to seizure. He's not seizing. So they take away his seizure medications, and they do the SPECT scan. And they come back to us and they said, his seizures are coming from everywhere. They're all over his brain. And they're like, we just can't do it. So at this point, we're there almost 6 weeks in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm not working. My wife's not working. So churches from all over are taking donations. They're helping us. My job is holding my job so I can get back to it. But I can't get back to it because I'm with my son that I may not see again. So we're watching our son's seizure. We've had enough. And we call our doctor. We're taking our son home to die. And they said, okay, but you can't do that. And we're like, yes, we can. So we load up our son with oxygen in the car. Our son is still seizing, and we take our son home. But we didn't take our son home. We took a vegetable. His hands. That was the last time I ever seen him smoke.
It's okay, just in your own time.
So we're back and forth into hospitals after time after time after time. So I could count about 17 times we're in the hospital. Each time a different hospital. Each time a different seizure. Each time everything is different. And still no answers. We're still on. They had tried every seizure medication they could come up with. And Eric is on about 8 of them now. And at this point, I'm like, could it be the seizure medications are making him seizure? So they start taking some away. And then they come back and says, well, Dad's a doctor now. So, maybe he knows more than we do because we're taking away these seizure medications and Eric is stopping the seizures. So we finally get a neurologist with a metabolic background to come in. He walks in and he says, this child has been seizuring for 24 hours. We have to do something or we're gonna lose him. So they try this medication called chlorhydrate. It's an old drug and it was a liquid. So we had to put an NG tube down our son to get the medication in him because they were afraid he would aspirate. So we do this and Eric sleeps for 2 days. No seizures whatsoever. So we finally think we have a drug that's going to work. So we take him home. At this point, we have to put an NG tube that's very small down our son's nose every night to give him his seizure medications. So my wife and I hold him down and we put the NG tube down. And this goes on for quite some time. So at this point, they're wanting to do more tests to find out what is going on with our son. So we've had muscle biopsies. We've had brain biopsies. We've had every kind of test you can think of sent to Duke University. He's got blood there that has been grown and done, things that, normal people don't see. So at this point, our son is 8 years old.
8 years old.
8 years old.
Oh,
He's still seizing, but not as bad. So, things are kind of calming down. But he's not growing. So it's almost like his little brain is not very big. It's not getting any bigger. So, but, we take what we can get at this point. So we work with our son till we get him to where we can at least see some of our son still there. My son never walked. He never talked. We had all these seizures all the time. At this point, we're asking the doctor. We're like, well, what do? We want to have more children. And he's like, well, let me do this one last test, and then we'll know for sure. And we're like, okay, after 8 years. And at this point, I'm all around, working at my job and doing things. And I come across this ad that someone had put in the paper about the compensation program. And I'm like, compensation program? I never even knew there was a compensation program for vaccines. So I do some investigating and find out that the same reactions that my son has had, other families are having the same problem. And I'm like, the crying, the seizures, all that, and it's connecting. And then finally our doctor comes back and he says, go and have more children. This is a reaction to the DPT vaccine. So we finally say, well, thank God, we know now what's happening. So we go and start building our family, and we're like, well, what do we do if our child winds up like Eric, the new baby? So we have a daughter, finally, born in 2000. She is perfect. She's healthy. No problems whatsoever. So,
but did you vaccinate?
No, we did not vaccinate. We had it in writing that our son had a reaction to the DPT vaccine, which we already knew. Already knew that in my heart, what had happened. And my wife did too. So after taking care of our son for 11 years, my wife has been at home with him. And then she just, she couldn't take it anymore. The seizures, the seclusion, being alone, being looked at like we were freaks or something. So we lived our lives in, Mississippi as long as we could. We lost our home. We lost our family. So we said we had nothing else to lose. I had heard about traveling nurses. At this point, we're in a rental. So we're like, okay, let's put everything in storage and let's go. So Denver, Colorado was our first assignment. So we got here, and I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm taking care of my daughter and my son. And I reached out to try and find out where I could get some help, support. I'm watching my son have seizure after seizure and die. So I need support. So I reached out and I made the YouTube video called One for Eric. And here in Colorado, I was finally able to have a voice for Eric. So I started networking with different people. So I finally got, people that would listen to me and look at me like I wasn't crazy. And we lived here. We finally bought a home here, and we got lots of support. So Eric got really sick. We have home health, so we were taking care of him inside the home. So his albumin got very, very low. And we had also, 3 months before that, had heard about CBD and how it helps children with seizures. And at that point, the FDA had decided that Eric's chlorohydrate was not approved. So they started taking it away. So we had to come up with something else. So I went and got Eric a red card. At this point, he's 21. So he's still not walking, still not talking. I only know what I think he needs by his eyes. So I, look at his eyes and I said, Dad, are you hungry? Things like that. So we're still steady trying to get his red card. And I have this video upstairs that it's like a security video where I can watch him instead of being right there with him all the time. So I paint, and that's the only way that I get some of the pain out. I paint things that he never saw. So we're sitting up in our room, and I'm watching the video, and I'm watching him. And I talked to my daughter, and I said, honey, are you in Eric's room? She said, no, Dad, why? I said, well, there's bugs. They're like fireflies. And I'm not crazy, by the way. But these fireflies are flying in his room. They're everywhere. So I go down to his room. There's no light in there whatsoever, just the camera and his night light. And all these fireflies, they look like little fairies that are flying around in his room, thousands of them. They're landing on him, and I'm just frantically trying to get them off. And I turn the light on, and there's nothing there. So this goes on for quite some time. And
sorry, I did a new battery.
Sorry.
My fault.
I'm sorry. But something keeps drawing me to do it. But I feel the need to go forward. But how do you go forward after this?
He'll show you the way. And now telling your stories and just keep doing it.
Back to the fireflies.
Yeah. They're fewer and fewer as the days go on. So I'm like, okay, well maybe they're going away. So and going to someone else to help another family or something like that. So I'm watching, and Eric is getting sicker and sicker. So we first take him in. They say his albumin is low. We need to give him some albumin. So they give him albumin. They send us home. I'm watching him, having the home health nurse come in. They're doing all their stuff, and it didn't really hit me until I didn't see the fireflies anymore. So on May 10th, our son decides that it's time for him to go. So we take him in, we call the ambulance, and we didn't know it at the time that he was trying to go there. So my wife said she couldn't do it. She couldn't let him go. So he was trying to go that night when he passed away. So but we went on to the hospital and let them do what they could do. And they put Eric on a ventilator, and they told us that he was already gone. So the fireflies went away. So Eric is buried up in Golden. So we called him Pooh Bear. So both the bears were with me.
These are Eric's bears?
Yes. They went to the board with him. My daughter is 16 years old. She wants to go to school to be a vet. She's not vaccinated whatsoever. She went to public school. We just signed an exemption here in Colorado so she could go. And I knew, this is where we were meant to be. My wife is an RN case manager. She's also a legal nursing consultant. And, but she can't really go public with what happened to our son because of the fact that she could lose her job.
You're doing a great job talking about the story.
Thank you.
Is this his t-shirt?
This is his t-shirt. This is him at the courthouse here in Denver. This was the last thing Eric did. I took him in to talk about the bill that they were trying to change our exemptions here in Colorado. So the representatives, the senators, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when they saw Eric and saw what had happened to him. The bill was not passed. So that was the last thing that I saw my son do before he passed away. This is our son that's the day before we left to go to Birmingham. That's the last look we ever saw him do.
There's too much reflection there.
We took him to different camps. Like they have an Adams camp here, and tried to live some kind of a normal life. There, he's 14 years old.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he's 14. Yeah. This was the last picture ever taken of him in his Bronco outfit. 2 weeks after this, he passed away.
It's amazing.
He was an angel here on earth. So, the fireflies are back. So, at 51, I had to start all over. New career. At this point, I had no income except for what my wife was bringing in. So I decided, well, maybe I should do my art stuff. And so I started a thing in my home called Magnolia Country, where people come in and they paint, kind of like you do with cocktails and canvas, except we do Southern sweet tea. And so we do that. And if it's, the people are willing and want to hear Eric's story, we tell it and we show them the fireflies. So on the video, and they come in and they watch them as they fly around.
Well, thank you so much for telling. It's so tragic. He suffered so long as well with his awful seizures.
Yeah, always. This is my childhood comfort place I used to go to when I was a child, and it's called Magnolia Road, Country Road, and this is things that Eric never got to see.
How can people see more of your art if they want to?
I have a website for Eric, and it's called One for Eric Vaccine Injury.
And that's one with
the
word.
ONE number 4 Eric at One for Eric Vaccine Injury, all one word, .com.
It's a truly, truly tragic story of a baby that had to grow up suffering so much. And for you parents, your daughter, I'm truly sorry. It just should never have been. And will you write Eric's name?
Yes.
Details on the back, please. Find yourself.
You want the last day?
We're going to keep going, you know, we're not going to let, everyone's going to know about it.